In this episode of the IT Experts podcast, we're going to help you understand the reality of your MSP services in 2024 with Keith Hayes. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast, the only podcast to help MSPs scale to 1 million, and if already there, get to 5 and go faster. At the end of the day, isn't it all about building a business that works for you rather than you for it? I hope you enjoy the show. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast. Today we've got a really special show. Well, they're all special shows, actually, in fairness. Today we're going to be talking to Keith Hayes, who is an MSP security expert, about expelling some of the myths and actually getting to the nitty-gritty, the nuts and the bolts around what MSPs should be doing and shouldn't be doing this year in 2024 around their security stack for their MSP. So welcome to the show, Keith.
Thanks, Ian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent stuff. Well, we met through one of our clients. You were doing some work with one of our clients, which I'm sure we will talk about in a little while. But through our conversations, which was really interesting, you know, there's been some big breaches recently, a lot of discussion, controversy, opinion on did they do the right thing? Did they not do the right thing? How did it happen? You know, did they leave the cat flap open, which is one of my favorite analogies around security, or was the back door widely open and with a big sign saying, hey, bad guys come in here? I think it's very interesting when things happen in the MSP space, because as we know, you know, they are a target to cybercrime and all of these and the horrible baddies. And luckily we've got people like you in the channel and in the area that can help us to expel some of these myths. So before we get too far into the nuts and the bolts of the show, Keith, do you want to explain to us kind of who you are, what you do, who you help, and kind of where you come from? What's your experience in this arena?
Certainly. As you can see, I'm about 4 million years old. I've been doing cybersecurity since it wasn't cyber. I can't remember what year they decided to call it cyber, but anyway. And I actually started off on a help desk years and years ago. So I've been there on the front lines in the trenches, and then I've managed help desks, and then I've helped MSPs right up to being global CISOs for big corporate companies like Boots and Dixons. But I still do a lot of voluntary work about talking to groups about awareness and about the reality of where threats come from, because there's a lot of scaremongering that goes around.
Yes, there is, yeah.
And a lot of snake oil salesmen. So it's trying to sort out the wheat from the chaff, really. So what I'm hopefully going to do is bring all of that experience to bear today when we talk about the reality of it. Actually, what are the challenges as an MSP, right? You haven't got unlimited resources. So how can you focus those in the right way to protect yourself? But then hopefully you're impressing your customers so much they come and talk to you about something else that they might want to buy from.
Exactly. And you know, running an MSP is bloody hard work as it is. And, you know, one of the things that we see a lot of the time, well, most of the time, almost every time actually, is the amount of new security vendors that have come up, the amount of new systems you need to protect this and to protect that and to do this and to do that. And when you start looking at the functionality of it and you go to some of these events, you look around the room and 70% of them are security vendors saying, oh, you need this and oh, you need that and one thing and another, and it's all about pen testing and we need to do this. And you know, when we talk about tools and we talk about the selection of what you need to keep safe, how would an MSP assess whether he's got the right or the wrong security stack and tool set in place? Because normally they go and buy a product and then they'll go and buy another product because they've marketed it in a different way. When in actual fact, the first product they've done probably fixes a second product. Obviously, this is something that you come across all the time, but how do we help the MSPs to sort, as you say, sort the wheat from the chaff?
I've got into a bit of trouble down the years and been called dangerous for simplifying this, right? It isn't, and I'm going to say it again, it's not that complicated. So if you can have a conversation around what risk means to you and what that means to your customers, because obviously, yes, get your own house in order, but obviously you're the custodian of someone else at the same time. So the basics, right? You can still point back to the basics. I mean, people kind of laugh at Cyber Essentials, but it's like 5 a day, you know, for fruits.
Yeah.
Have you got an antivirus system? That's the very, very first thing. And is it being managed and is it running properly? And is somebody monitoring it to make sure it's working? Have you got your patches installed? Right, because that is still a massive vector for attackers. That's the biggest exploit for attackers now is send a phishing email in and you haven't got a patch on.
Yeah.
It's almost like an arms race. Do you know what I mean? You think about it in terms of, have you got the right missiles to shoot the missiles down? Well, missiles from like 10 years ago still work if you haven't got the right patches on your machine.
Yes.
So That's a key. Access control is a big one for MSPs, right? So let's just lean on that for a second. So we're assuming that, antivirus is a bit leapfroggy. So just to go back to that. So if you're getting a decent leading antivirus, right, and remember that Bitdefender on Windows is pretty damn good now. It never used to be, but it is now. And you're getting your patches done and somebody's monitoring that those patches are done. So you're looking at your vulnerabilities. Somebody's job is to look for those vulnerabilities. Now, when we talk about access control, and access control is about passwords and accounts and things like that, right, this is where it starts to become very interesting for an MSP, right? Do you recognize that guy that works for you that's got all the passwords, that knows how to fix all the systems? And if it gets really, really stuck, it ends up with him, right? I'll call him Ian. Well, we'll call him Ian, right? So, but he's also likely to be the one that's got, in the best way, a backdoor password, because he's always the one that needs to fix it. And it might go wrong when he's on holiday, or it might go wrong when he's at home, and everything ends with him. That is a threat vector for you as an MSP. If you recognize that guy is one of your big risks, not a piece of technology. That guy is also probably the guy that likes to have some little tools and toys to help him fix things that aren't necessarily onto the next bit, is your inventory, right? Do you know what machines you've got? And you know what's installed on those machines? That's the key. So if I've got Adobe Acrobat, I know that the bad guys are going to come out with an exploit for that every month, but Acrobat are going to come out with a patch. If I'm a dyed-in-the-wool back-end techie that's installed lots of open source little tools that help me do my job because it's easier, and hacks come out for them, you don't even know as an MSP you've got that on your estate, never mind whether it's being patched or not. So you've got to install a discipline across the staff, which is we need to understand and have an inventory of exactly what tools we're using, because you could be patched up to the gills, but if you've got something they don't even publish patches for, you've got a problem potentially. So let me just lean into that, why that becomes a compounded issue then for your guru guys, right? So typically what they'll do is they'll stay logged onto an admin account all day because it's easier. Consequently, then if that account gets compromised, they've got admin access across the board. If it's an admin account and they're doing remote management and the target machine's got viruses on it,
yep,
now somebody else has got your admin password as well. So you've got to install a discipline within staff that says, right, an admin user ID is used for admin tasks, and the rest of the time you're using a basic user ID that doesn't have privileged or escalated access, right? Because when you get it hacked, that gets inherited, you're in problem. So again, I mean, this is just experience, right? So I had a recent instance where I discovered somebody who was supporting a number of websites, but using the same admin password, because it's easier to support, isn't it? It makes life easier. I'm under pressure. The boss is telling me I've got to fix it really quick. I don't want to be worrying about lots and lots and lots of different passwords. Right? Well, you do, right? Find a reputable password manager, change them on a regular basis. And the last bit of the access control piece is obviously use multi-factor authentication, right? Make sure you get in a code. I don't care who knows my password because I can't get in because it's going to give me a multi-factor, right? In a nutshell, that's the big bit that I've seen and I see everywhere I go. And when I talk to people, they kind of nod sagely, right? Try and stop tools sprawling. Basic tools will work. You don't need to buy the snake oil, right? Good antivirus, good vulnerability scanner. Penetration tests are great but expensive. And penetration tests will tell you that you were secure last Wednesday. Well, okay, or 6 months ago, it's a point in time. So if you can install change control, this is the other big MSP bugbear, right? We've got a problem, fix it. And then I'll try that. I'm not sure if that works. I'll try that. I'm not sure if that works. And then ultimately it gets fixed, but you're not quite sure what you did to fix it, right? I get that we're stretched on resource. We can't have lots and lots of gurus, but you've got to have some kind of peer review in there from a change control perspective. Otherwise, somebody just jumps on, fiddles around at the back end. You don't know what's happened. That's how you protect your investment in penetration tests. So you might have a penetration test done and say, right, I'm okay. And if you've got some good change control along the way, you know what changes have been made. So you can make a good case to go, I don't need an expensive penetration test. I'll just do a vulnerability scan, which is relatively cheap, until such maybe next year when I'll do another one. But if people are tinkering around in the back end, you can't with a degree of certainty say that you're secure anymore. So change control, peer review.
Because you're kind of leaving that door open all day if you're sitting in your admin account, when in actual fact, you can just nip in and nip out and secure it back up again by it not being open and accessed as it would be. Let's talk for a minute about, is there such a thing as a typical MSP? I'm going to pick a number out of the sky now. So we've got an MSP They're turning over about 750K. We're going to say they're a lean, mean operating machine. They've got 5 or 6 people with them, a couple of help desks, maybe 3 help desks, one on projects, bit of a manager, maybe a bit of an admin, something like that. When we've been talking about previous breaches and situations that we've heard about, I've understanding your monitoring, and I did a podcast recently with Mark from Chorus, who had just set up their own CSOC, which was really interesting for me. Not being from a technical background, I kind of like all this techie stuff because it's like, oh, hang on a minute, that's interesting. And they'd set up this whole monitoring system to help you keep safe and secure, because there's someone there all the time, all day, all night, looking at your system. Now, it's an amazing opportunity, I think, and for some, it's great and needed. And depending on client base size and all this sort of thing, there isn't one size fits all MSP. But going back to our super successful MSP, where they've only got 5 or 6 people, what level of very good technically, everything's kind of all working in terms of getting things up and running and fixing problems. But what sort of level of support, attention, time, training, monitoring would you suggest that typical MSP should be operating on their own SOPs during an average week, for example?
I'm just thinking about how much time you spend training on standard operating procedures in a week. But logging and monitoring is usually a weak point. It always is. So people work their way through trying to get cyber essentials. They go to logging and monitoring. They go, right, do we need a SOC or do we need what's called a SIEM to collate all of the different logs and pump them through some logic questions and work out what we need to look at? Right? Those can end up very, very expensive very, very quickly. Depending on, unless you've got a 750K a year MSP, probably hasn't got massively complicated systems, probably supporting the usual stuff. It's a Google, it's a Microsoft, it's an on-site firewall. They might have a bit of web filtering for that customer, right? So it's not going to be complicated. As long as you've got the staff time and you make sure that they do it, each of those products produces a small log anyway. So if it's somebody's job to check them and then to send an email to say that they've been checked, you're kind of performing the task of a mini SOC, right?
Okay.
Now, training is absolutely key, right? The guys on the project team and the guys on the help desk team are usually the first wave, right? So you get a call that comes in and says, I think my password's been hacked. Well, if it's one customer within a client, might be many, right? Maybe they're under attack. And you have to remember that you are usually the source of all knowledge in that size. So they go, well, we haven't even got any IT people left. So we have to ask you everything about IT. That puts you in a super position to give them some great advice. But you need to make sure the staff on the desk themselves are trained to spot a potential security event as opposed to a ticket. Oh, and everything in the world is a ticket, by the way. You don't need me to tell you that, do you?
Yeah.
Right. No drama. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a ticket, right? So I've had some alerts that I've missed, right, as being the cyber expert within an MSP that the desk have picked up. And actually, they respond really well to that training as well, I've found.
Yeah.
Because it kind of you set them up as like almost investigators. So they're looking at tickets in a different way. So the training is absolutely key. But you can, depending on your staff, right, and how much time they've got. But each of the security products that secure, so for instance, Active Directory or Office 365 or any firewall will produce a log of its own, right? So as long as you know what normal looks like, you're then looking for abnormal. To give you a really quick instance, right? PlayStation had a massive hack once, which I was involved in investigating. They'd have caught it if they checked the logs. And they're going, we haven't got time to go through checking all the logs. And he looked at the size of the logs, and on Monday it was this big, Tuesday it was this big, Wednesday it was this big, Thursday it was this big, right? You didn't need to be checking the detail of it. You're going to go, hold on a minute, something's going on.
And that's the events of the things that have happened, and all of a sudden something's out of the normal. For the purpose of listening to this podcast on audio, Keith has done Tuesday, Wednesday, very small, Thursday, large hand movement.
There you go. That's an insular approach. Yeah. That regular checking can be something that some of the trainees that we had them doing that because it's a really important job. And you get a positive, I have done this check and it's like that. And it gets people invested in it because they're actually proactively protecting the environment.
And the first question that we've kind of answered there was, how do we, when it comes to security, how do we get our own house in order? And it sounds like the answer to that question was, don't just plug in a product and go away and play golf and expect it to do what you want it to do. Make sure it's someone's role, responsibility, ticket triage, whatever it might be, to go and make sure everything okay with product 1, everything okay with product 2, everything okay with product 3, and then making sure you're keeping all the doors shut and, looking at those logs and knowing what looking good and looking bad looks like. But more importantly, that training, which I'm guessing that the vendors will give you on the products, won't they? So that you can get where you need to be in terms of a minimum level.
They will, but it's fairly simple. The real value in training is getting an awareness session with the desk. That's where the real gold is, because they understand that if this log says something and a ticket that comes in says, I can't get onto my account anymore, that they can put it together to go, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Right? And then we've actually done rewards for desks before. I've done financial little incentives for help desk operators that spot security events. Right? And then it almost becomes a puzzle during the day. Because your biggest asset is the people, absolutely every time. Technology is great, right? But the biggest asset, as usually, is the people. And if you've got them as your little army checking stuff and correlating some of the information, because humans correlate these rules better than these big seams do.
And it's around understanding, connecting it together and working out what good looks like and what a little bit odd should look like and things like that. So apart from getting, checking your logs, making sure you've got some, the good training and you're understanding a little bit more. Everyone's kind of been trained a little bit more in that place. What's some other good best practices that you'd recommend for an MSP to make sure that their house is in order as a kind of like a baseline minimum?
The big ones that jump out for me, we've kind of talked about a little bit anyway, right? And we don't have to over-engineer it. It doesn't need to slow the business down, but it's about change control. Understand what changes are being made, because with the amount of litigation around now and with regulatory compliance, a big thing, you could find out that a technical operative, for the best reasons, are taking risk decisions on behalf of your business and your clients' businesses as well. And it needs to be you that takes that risk. So change control is absolutely fundamental. So when the environment changes, the inventory is absolutely key. Again, absolutely key. And because MSPs are such a juicy target, because if they get admin access, they've got all your customers too. Right? That access control has to be tight. Right? It's got to be multi-factor. You don't log on all day with your admin ID, and you don't share passwords because it makes your life easier.
So how does the MSP business owner then test his own internal processes so that he knows everything's been done, organised, monitored, and everything's in a good place? How does he get to sleep at night?
Well, you do the random audit thing, right? I used to work for a fantastic manager who was he managed by random interference, his comment was, and I really liked him. Because you never know which bit he was going to look at. You need to make sure it was all right, because you just never knew, right? So just take an odd sample of things. So have a look at how many admin accounts have you got? When was the last time an ordinary account was logged into? So if your guru's got an ordinary account you're supposed to be using, and the last time it was logged into 2 weeks ago, you've got a fairly good idea that he's logged admin
he's sitting in his
all
admin
day long.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Depending on the level of technical expertise, like I say, all of these small and these are not expensive tools, all produce a log. So just go and have a look every now and again. Yeah, what's the success of your patching? Then. So another issue, and this is difficult to report to a customer, it's a thorny one for customers, but also for you, is you send a report to your customer to say, we're doing your patching for you, and 95% of machines are all patched every week. Does it ever occur to somebody that the 5% might always be the same 5%? So it's about just having a little down, go and get your feet wet, just go and have a little look. So maybe go and have a look at your antivirus, right? What's that look like? Because this is fantastic. This is gold for your customers too, potentially. So how many alerts did we have last week? 3. How many alerts we got this week? 20. Isn't that a conversation with somebody, right? How's my patching getting on? Am I successfully getting my patches done? If I'm not, why not? That's another one. How often are passwords being changed? Right, you can pick that up from Active Directory if you're using Active Directory, or you can force password changes as well on people, sure that they don't just sit there festering away for it. So you can dip in. And again, these are not expensive products, right? So you probably got antivirus anyway, so the alerts are free. Bitdefender will give you alerting. You can look at that. That's free as well. Vulnerability scanners are relatively cheap, and if you're clever enough, free. So again, that will give you an idea. I would. That's my approach.
Yeah. Okay. It's wonderfully simple in terms of, you've got the tools there. Just look at them, go and do an audit, make sure that you're checking in on things and make sure that your tools are there, are serving a purpose, and you're exploiting all the features of each of the tools. Because as you alluded to there, this is, yes, you've got all of your customers there, you're a high target, which kind of comes on to the last bit I just wanted to talk about, which was around how do we now we know what's going on with our client systems and the logs and the information and the opportunities and all of that kind of good stuff. How do we then approach to sell this without selling it? And more importantly, selling it without fear? Because I think there's a lot of people try and scare people. You need this, otherwise your business is going to go out of touch and all of that sort of thing. And whenever we're talking to our clients around this, we're always saying, we'll have a conversation with them about what's the impact of not doing this? What's the impact if you couldn't log on to your system today? What's the impact if your clients can't log on to their system today? Where's the contracts lying? But, what are some of the basics around how an MSP could approach this, either in an account management conversation or in a pitch to a new client? What were some of your techniques for that? Because I know this is one of your expertises, isn't it?
Well, depending on how far out your services reach into the clients, whether you're providing them with a managed security service as well as a support service, potentially. There's an awful lot of activity happening all the time, as we know, in that threat space. Knock it up into a PowerPoint and get it out to the customer. I used to describe it as I'm old enough to remember Tom and Jerry. When Tom's sitting outside Jerry's house, I'll wait for him to come out, right? That is the whole of the internet waiting for a vulnerability all the time. So the customer will know there's something humming away in the background.
Yeah.
But you can prove, well, actually, we've blocked this many threats. We've blocked on the firewall, for instance. We've done this many patches. You might have seen, the latest, the very latest hack is the big LinkedIn, the mother of all breaches, which has been published this week, right? Billions of records been lost. So leaders of companies have those conversations, go, does this affect me? So if you do pick up, because remember, you are the font of all knowledge, probably, right? They've outsourced it to you. They haven't got anybody else. They might have an enthusiastic amateur that probably gets in your way, right? But they won't have anybody else to ask. So if there is a big news article, for instance, like that, why don't you just drop them a note just to tell them why that affects them or why it doesn't affect them?
Yeah.
Because it's a business conversation. The other thing I would say is have a risk conversation with them if you can about their business, right? If you understand what makes their business tick, critical processes or critical applications, right, you can have a conversation that you can look at the services that you provide and look at any risk there and highlight a risk to them, just in a friendly, not a sales conversation, which is to go, well, actually, we've had a look at that, we've compared it to there. Let me give you just one quick, for instance. I've taught lots of MSPs to talk in two different phrases, right? RTO and RPO are the two big phrases that go and talk to your customer about recovery time objective and recovery point objective. So with your service that you deliver to somebody, recovery time objective is, if it goes bang, how long does it take to get it back working again? Well, Ian, that cannot be down for more than 4 hours because it cost me a fortune. Right? So that's your recovery time objective. So how often you take the backups can't be 6 hours. It can't be daily, right? So that structures the service that you provide to them, for instance, right? Hot standby devices may be, depending on whether you're delivering server services or not. Can you get that back within 4 hours? Does your contract support that, right, to that customer? So always have that. What's your RTO for that system? What's your RTO for that? RPO is a recovery point objective. So if it goes bang, how much data can you afford to lose before it really, really hurts? Those two conversations with a customer can usually flush out potential where you can assist their business. Make sure that the service that you're providing fits in with what they expect. Because you're the source of all knowledge, you will get a conversation with, if you'd have told me about that, Ian, I'd have done something about it afterwards. Right? Who else are we going to ask about IT? Right. It was up to you to tell me.
But also from that point of view, they're actually telling you what they want in terms of the service that's going to affect their operations, and then you just match your services to their requirements. So no one's selling anything. You're not telling them that they need to be doing, having it recovered in such a way, or we're going to do it in such a way, and it's going to cost you X amount. It's all coming from their point of view, which is, they're buying it from you rather than you having to sell it to them, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, would you believe? We won't say which city it was, but there was a full internet facility running in a library in a metropolitan city, which I did a check on. And this is about, that was a massive flagship service for them. And you go and do digging and poking around, you actually found a little 6-volt, 10-port switch hanging out the back of the cabinet that if it went bang would have taken the whole thing down. I'm not even sure they made those things anymore. So it's just understanding. I mean, from a process and a people and a system and a service point of view, you can be a business advisor, not just an MSP, to go, we probably couldn't get, with what we're currently doing, we probably couldn't get that back within 16 hours. Is that okay? And if they go, yeah, then you get them to sign it. Because then when it's not back within 16 hours, you're going to go, well, you accepted that risk. And that risk conversation is fundamental, absolutely fundamental.
And that's the part of then lining up with their terms and conditions and contract and everything like that, just to make sure that everything's all in good order. Keith, a whole load of information here. Just before we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that we've other security podcasts that we've done recently. As I say, we did the podcast with Mark from Chorus about their CSOC, but also in episode 133, we were talking about securing your stack with Andrew Erdley from MSP Easy Tools, which was very interesting all around how that sits with the Microsoft platform. And then our good friend Trevor Cornbill, who we know through CompTIA, he unravelled a bit of cyber insurance, which, more and more we talk about this now, shouldn't be used as a plaster. It should be used as a last defence sort of thing to protect your business. And that was in episode 142. So a couple of other episodes there. We'll drop those links into the show note, which are very interesting and align up with this subject, I think, really well. That's been great. Thank you. I mean, I love it because I learn an awful lot here, Keith, anyway, from my point of view, which is really great. But what final thoughts have you got today for the MSPs listening to this? The plan has not been to scare or to scaremonger. It's to make it, as you sort of say, very simple and straightforward. So what's at the top of the hour for you in terms of final thoughts today, Keith?
Well, I'd very much say my approach has always been one of very much pragmatic, right? We haven't got ultimate resources, all of us. And I'm not disparaging any of the security vendors at all in any way. But in my experience, which is obviously very, very long, if you do the basic things well, you're probably going to protect yourself as much as or better than most people. Most big breaches are some really basic thing that's been missed. If a really talented or determined hacker wants to get you, they will, regardless of how big you are, right? But most of the time, you're not a big target, but you are a target. Do the basics really, really well. You can do that really, really cost effectively, and then you're protected better than most. You'd be surprised how big companies not even doing the basics properly.
That's brilliant. And when you hear about some of these incidents that are happening, you go, well, how did that happen? It's because such and such wasn't patched. And it was like, what? That's so simple. And you hear them all talking to each other, and then you've got to look in the mirror and go, could that have been me? So keep it simple, keep it really simple, which I think is the summary of today's show. Keith, thank you very much for your time in preparing for the show, and also your expertise and knowledge today. It's been absolutely brilliant. Do you just want to share with everybody, if you've piqued their interest and they want to have a chat with you about anything we've talked about today or anything to do with security at all in their MSPs, then how do they get in contact with you?
Probably the best way is through LinkedIn. You can find me, Keith Hayes, on LinkedIn. Drop me a message in LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a chat and offer some advice.
Fantastic. And we'll pop your LinkedIn link in the show notes so people can do that nice and easily. So look, great. Thanks ever so much for that. Wishing you a very super safe 2024. And look forward to catching up with you soon, I'm sure. Thanks again, Keith. Cheers now. So I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, I'd love it if you could leave a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform. If you want to learn more about how to take your MSP to $1 million, or if you're already there, go faster, then come and join Stuart Warwick and myself in the Scale with Confidence Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. You go and enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.